All right, so I get started with just a quick introduction, who I am, and then we are jumping right into. And feel free to ask questions during. I'd like to keep the Q&A session maybe towards the end. So just to give you guys a little bit of structure on how this is going down today, the idea is basically that I'm going to introduce myself, then I'm going to review your guys' portfolios. So Emily's, Cameron's, and Kerri's portfolio. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about what is an ideal portfolio, what do we want to see, because I've worked on both ends. I worked on the artist end and I worked on the actual recruiting end where I've recruited people, specifically modelers, character modelers, and facial modelers for my team. And and yeah, then we're going to talk a little bit about, let me just see my bullet points here, a little bit about what's good practice, what can you do now, if in case you're not already working in the industry, what is the most important things to be hired, basically. So, and by that, you guys can ask questions in the chat. I'll try to incorporate them as best as possible during the time we are I'm talking about things. But yeah, so I don't want to disrupt too much as well, asking questions while reviewing certain things, if that's okay for you guys. All right, so let me try and share if or try share my screen and see if that screen sharing feature works here, because then we can start right with a little bit of introduction. So no, the first part I can do without screen. So I'm originally from Switzerland, born and raised in Switzerland, and then I discovered 3D. Probably like most of you, discovered 3D, was really drawn into by it. That was back with Cinema 4D. YouTube wasn't the biggest thing back then. Learning resources were a little harder because, yeah, I learned with books like this, bought them in the bookstore. Sometimes the worst examples in there, but it just was a much harder learning than these days. Yes, I will use that share function, but that first section doesn't need sharing, so I'll be right sharing there. And basically, that led me eventually in my life to the question as well, what do I want to do? Because I was working in photography here in Switzerland, more on the technical side, dealing with clients, customers, and so on. So I was not necessarily doing the creative part, but 3D was always a little bit on the sideline running for me. And I was like, okay, what do I want to do with my life, right? And as so many of you potentially as well, or at least a lot of my students, I'm teaching for Think Tank as well, but I get to that in a second. So many of my students as well, they come from so different backgrounds, like bankers, nurses, we have gardeners, like all different things of people who want to learn this beautiful art and this amazing craft, basically. So ask myself eventually, what do I want to do? And I decided then as well to go take in a school for portfolio and really kind of digging in and creating my own portfolio. So I went to Vancouver Film School back then, because Noman School was a little bit too expensive for what I could afford back then. I couldn't take 2 years just off and just finance myself without actually working for school. So went to Vancouver Film School, and after school I got immediately hired at Image Engine, which is it's more like it's a film, a boutique film studio, and that's where I'm starting to share now, just to give you a little bit of insight on projects I worked on. And then we can keep going from there. So just a sec, sharing seems to work. Let's go with this. Hope you guys can see this. Is that showing? Perfect. I think it does, huh? So started Image Engine, got the chance to work immediately on Independence Day, then Final Fantasy. For you game guys, this is probably a pretty cool thing. And then Game of Thrones. And Final Fantasy was a really cool project, and specifically because I got a chance to see I got a chance to see all the assets from Square Enix, and I couldn't believe how perfect and amazing each single asset was modeled. Like, we got huge cities, insane sizing and scale of things, and it was just mind-blowing how beautiful that was all executed. Pretty much everything was perfect subdiv modeling on all their assets. And that's what they use then in games as well, right? So incredible quality of assets. It was a really fun project to work on with a lot of asset work. At that time, I started myself more as a prop modeler, asset modeler, building weapons, building props, whatever has been needed. Not that much character work. Then eventually I moved over to Stoic because Image Engine ran out of work. The film industry works a little bit in waves. During the summer, a little less work. During the winter, much more, and into the spring, and then a little less. Changed since the streaming services are so up and running. So it's constantly pretty busy. Then went to over to Stoic Studios where I worked more on episodic stuff, which was really interesting because sometimes we worked on a episode which was aired next day. So it was kind of insane when it comes to timelines and all that kind of stuff. Just to see how fast we had to iterate through things. So worked on a couple shows here. Some of them were just complete one season canceled. You know, in TV you work on a different. I mean, it's like in games too, right? Where you either you work on an amazing game or you work on something which is getting tried out and see how it works, and maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. That's totally part of the industry as well, and it's unfortunate. Yeah, it's just what it is, right? Not everything is amazing and good. So after Stoic, I went over to Digital Domain. That's where I spent most of my time. I was like 6 or 7 years at Digital Domain, where I worked on a lot of different movies, starting with Ready Player One. Then we worked on a Chinese production. That was The Rescue. It was a really cool project. Avengers Infinity War and Endgame. That's where I transitioned to become a facial modeler. And just to clarify real quick what facial modelers do, we're specialized on sculpting facial expression, which is then being used to animate a face. So very, very focused on facial modeling, facial expressions and things like that. Worked on Thor Ragnarok, Morbius, and then I had my first game encounters here as well. That was we worked on some of Call of Duty's cinematics, which was pretty cool, getting the game assets, and then we just made them pretty much like render ready and textured them and everything, and rendered some cool cinematics out of those. And I took a lead role on the KERRI. For those of you who know Supermassive Games or played Supermassive Games, was a pretty cool game, which is kind of self-driven. You can basically make decisions, and the game changes based Amelie, I see, played it as it looks like. So I was responsible. I flew down to LA, scanned all the actors, was responsible for the head builds, the quality on the heads. We did all the facial performance capturing. We did all the facial expressions work. The challenge on that project was clearly because in film, we can deal with an insane amount of data, right? That's usually why when we play games, I just play the latest Call of Duty, and I'm like, these facial expressions still look just so bad, right? And especially when they do the out of the cinematics. And it's just because game engines at that stage, they can't handle the insane amount of data you can handle in film, but it's definitely getting better and better by the year, which is amazing to see. So that was a really fun project. And at Digital Domain, we had a really cool team, and that was called the Digital Human team. And that led for me to a couple more interesting projects, as you can see, right? So we started building this little group called Digital Human Group. And we were specializing on creating life-driven performance characters in Unreal. So how can somebody wear just a camera in their face, track the facial performance without any tracking markers, and then actually transfer it first on a digital recreation of the actor himself, and secondly onto a digital avatar. So this was a huge success as well. We had a whole TED talk about that. And this is a little image here from a light stage. This is, for those of you who know a little bit the scanning process, these are tons of cameras behind here, tons of lights, and these stages are made where we put the actors in, and then we scan their facial expressions and their heads, and we get really, really high resolution head builds out of those. Of course, they need to then be prepared with proper topology to be game ready, to be, just in general, ready for production. And after that, Time came to us and asked, like, hey guys, can you do a virtual event for us where Martin Luther King actually has the speech and people can watch it with VR goggles, right? So got the chance then to work on the Martin Luther King head. So I built the whole head, and the nice thing at the end was it was actually printed on the cover magazine of the Time magazine itself. So this was a really exciting project, especially because we could work without scanned data, right? So there was no scanned data available. So I could start sculpting straight out of a sphere and going through the full creative process on that. And that was a really, really amazing project. So yeah, then wrapping my digital domain time led me to Scanline, and at Scanline I worked on Flash and Black Adam. On Flash was mostly facial related. It was interesting to see how different digital domain comes from a very, very high standard in facial quality. Just to give you an example, my supervisor or my boss at digital domain, he worked on Avatar, on Lord of the Rings, at Weta, and all these things. So that comes from a very high quality point of view. Scanline is more like growing into the character work, so it was a very big quality difference in the tools I had available and what we were able to do. But it was a really fun experience to build a couple digital likenesses of other older actors, and especially the time frame was interesting because we had to build a digital representation of Christopher Reeve, and then I was asking, so okay guys, like how much time do we have? I was like 3 weeks, and I was like, what? Because usually, if you know, like just to give you an example, Thanos, for these movies we worked over a year just on the head and the blend shapes, just the blend shapes alone, just over a year. So you can imagine now how 3 weeks to a year starts to look like, right? So it's a little crazy. Anyway, it was a cool project, and yeah, after that I decided, back in 2019, I already decided to a part-time capacity to start teaching. And so I took an advanced characters class at Think Tank. I didn't took it, but I instructed basically. And I really started enjoying teaching. It was something I absolutely love. I love seeing my students grow. I love teaching them cool stuff and see it being translated into their projects. So that basically was for me then a kickoff here after 10 years industry or 11 years industry, finally to say, you know what? I'm transitioning more towards like an educational part. So I'm basically responsible more for like all our supervisors and online educators at Think Tank Training Center. I'm still teaching myself. I help with content development. I'll help with admission events where I do little sculpting demos or things like that. So there's a lot of cool and variety opportunity. And besides that, I work on my own little collectible business at the moment, which is then getting launched towards the end of the year. So a lot of stuff happening in the sculpting side of things, because that's the part I keep falling back to and enjoying the most. So yeah, but that's pretty much it for my side. And all I wanted to say to you right now, while you're starting here, or I don't know where your careers are at right now, if you're already in the industry, if not, but in my opinion, it was one of the best decisions to get into the industry, to pick up this beautiful craft and this beautiful hobby. It started with a hobby because it has so much variety, right? And you guys know you can create environments, you can create fantasy environments, you can create high realistic copies of the world and of humans. We can do likeness projects. We have so many different ways to challenge ourselves and create cool stuff, and that's just what I still love, even after being in this industry for a long time. I think I'm still exactly the same enthusiastic about these things. And it's amazing to see now your guys' work when we come here into the portfolios and just see what you guys are already creating. And it's beautiful. And I can only recommend you guys to keep going these paths. And I know sometimes they can be challenging, of course, like everything in life. And you all know, if you push through a project like this, you know the struggles of 3D, right? You know it takes a shit ton of time. Sorry for my wording, but you know it takes a lot of time. You know, we reach those struggle points and areas where we're just like, oh, I want to quit these technical problems, want to throw my computer out of the window whatsoever. And then we get back to it and we start loving it. And then we get eventually to reap the benefits of our projects by just looking at them, right? So guys, before I I'm stopping screen sharing here and I'll reshare again just on my browser because I want to actually go into your ArtStation profiles here. So just to talk a little bit about presentation and things like, oh, nice. We have the Jose Pablo, is that correct? VFS alumni, yeah, so cool. I actually remember the first, and the, so funny, that's so funny. Yeah, them too. Cool. So I'll stop sharing here for a second and I'll be right back with my other browser where your portfolios are open. And let me see if we just got a couple questions here meanwhile. Oh, Amelie's asking. Yes, I am from the German speaking part. Yes, in Bern. So anything else? Independence Day, epic start. Yeah, thanks, Shivinas. That was it was a I was pretty stoked about that start as well. On my end, just to start with some movies like that. All right, so let's jump into this here and share my browser again. Just a sec. It's like two screens. I don't know about you guys, but probably you all work with two screens, and sometimes it's not enough. So I had my craziest time was when I had four screens, and I was like, huh. I got so fast used to four screens, like two horizontal and two on top of each other, and I was like, this is amazing. I could use even more. So, but whatever. So we're gonna share here. Where we go? Where we go? Screen share. This one, yes. All right, let's go. Cool, KERRI, let's get started here. So can you guys see my screen? I think it works. Yeah. Awesome. Can share. All right. Perfect. Sounds good. So let's dive into here. I mean, first of all, it's always amazing to see the progression through your project. And I know this was your submission project, but I want to just I thought this was pretty cool here, in particular that one. The interaction we have in this type of presentation, right? We have rotation, we have something moving, something changing. We can click these different elements and we get immediately to it. So this is from an interactive and presentation way, a really amazing way to showcase things. I'm not gonna go, I mean, you know by yourself probably by now, this was posted last year, so that when it comes to a texture point of view, I would expect, of course, a little bit more. When we texture stuff, the most important part is usually to think about where we have edge wear, why we have edge wear, what is causing the edge wear, and so on. So there is a lot of different elements they affect our textures, right? So for me, as example, things like when I see every edge is worn down, has a certain procedural element in it, but I can see already, like, and that's the cool stuff about looking at these different portfolios, is the progression through stuff, right? The quality progression you guys have from your first post into your second, third, and fourth. So I just want to point this out, guys. In general, I think presentations like that are very nice to look at. We have GIFs, we have interaction happening and things like that. We have even a little bit of concept breakdown here, which is amazing, but it keeps the viewer engaged. And that's something you have to treat as a priority, specifically if you want to intrigue recruiters. You have to know, guys, that some recruiters, they're not artists themselves. So recruiters have, they're tasked with, hey, get me a couple environment artists to interview, get me a couple prop artists to interview, and so on. So what recruiters see is their first impression, and that's based on what they take your work, and then they forward it to the team to be like, hey, are you guys interested in this or that, and so on, right? So basically, this was here the winner project of the first place project. And I think, KERRI, you wrote it is a work in progress, right? So take it with a grain of salt when I point things out. But I think already this brings me to the fact as well of, should I post work in progress or not? I think you should. Especially if it's at a quality like that, right? A work in progress piece like that, we can show different lighting scenarios shown. And KERRI, correct me if I'm getting this wrong, but it looks like you actually created most of this with just 2 trim sheets, which is a pretty impressive pretty impressive work for me to look at by just the planning and still the feeling of variety in this project just being created with two trim sheets and the low on the lower end of resources in that sense, right? So that's been really, really amazing. And I think here as well we get an establishing opening shot which is really catching my eye, and that's the biggest important the part. If you guys showcase an ArtStation link, you want to get the recruiter's eye right away at the first shot, right? So make sure it's something like, whoa, okay, cool, I keep scrolling. And that's exactly what happens here. We have a variety as well. So I see this big opening shot, then we see something a little closer for me to actually study a little bit what's happening here in the details and everything. Then immediately we have a change inside, different lighting. This call still keeps me being engaged and looking at it. And even here, I feel the lighting balance is pretty nice. And just gotta open my pen tool here real quick so we can, let's see. I can outline or can draw better, and you guys don't have to try to follow my mouse. So stuff like this, we still see information. We have light here. We still see information. We don't have areas which are completely blacked out or whited out, right? And that's always stuff which is very important for your presentation to see and to look at. Then we have another overall shot. It almost feels like this here. Maybe it's further away. Maybe it's the background. But no, it's further away. But it still gives me the impression that, oh, cool, I'm still engaged. And this is another thing I'll repeat on after we're done with the review, on the importance of not repeating the same thing over and again. So stay away from cameras. They show the same thing again and again. And I think that's been really nicely done here in this presentation, in this portfolio, where we can get a clear idea. Now immediately we get into some more technical stuff, which is still engaging for me to watch. A breakdown of your different modular elements, again, like an asset kit here. And again, this is all stuff worth to show, because somebody who builds games and game art teams, they want to see these kind of things, right? And especially here as well, if you can showcase how to use your RGB masks and all that kind of stuff, amazing, because it shows an immediate technical understanding. And this is just a screen recording with a little bit like going through the menus and displaying the asset or the setup in action. And I think this is a really, really great way to showcase your skills, what you've taken care of in this project, what you can do with it, how you can break it up in interesting ways, and so on. So for me, when it comes to that, this is an exemplary portfolio specifically for a whip stage already. This is something I personally, if you, let's say I'm not sure, like it looks like you are still studying, KERRI, or are you done with studies? Maybe you can just leave me a note here real quick. You're studying, exactly. So honestly, if students of mine, and I see we have Sriram here. Hello. Sriram is with Think Tank as well, and he had an advanced term student project already where I'm like, apply for jobs with that one already, right? So if you can at that point, I would definitely, this is application ready, right? So you can send this to a potential employer and be like, hey, I'm still studying, but this is what I have so far. And I think this is pretty cool to showcase, to have something at that level. Again, guys, quality is still the most important part. If your work in progress is not quite there where you want it, I probably would still stay back a little bit or ask some other people around you, hey, what do you think? Do you think I can already publish that? I don't know about you, but for me, it's always, if I'm looking for too long at my project, I kind of lose objectiveness. And I'm like, I don't know if this completely sucks or is still cool, you know? So, and at that kind of level, and that keeps going, you know, you're here with your skills and your expectation is here. But the problem is, my expectation, my skill never reaches my expectations because they grow together. So it's very annoying, right? And I think if you're like that, you sometimes need a second pair of eyes to just kind of getting a little bit a perspective on it, have somebody to ask to, hey, what do you think, is that cool, still cool, can I present this? But here as well, like what I love about this light, guys, watch how nicely we get the roughness breakups, right? We immediately get a feeling of how the stone actually looks and behaves in light. So it's not an animation, it's not a camera move or anything, but it's a simple light rotating through it and giving us a clear idea on how. Because for me specifically, it's very important to see roughness maps. I want to, because roughness maps are one of the most important aspects in 3D asset creation. An asset really loses its realism as soon as there is no roughness breakup. If the roughness looks all the same across all objects, that's a loss. So focusing on these maps and displaying them and how they work can be really, really important. But we talk about that a little bit later as well. Here as well, another beautiful breakdown on, even with a description. That's going above and beyond in that case, because that's basically you sharing knowledge as well with other artists. And this is something I have to say I find really beautiful in the 3D industry, is the sharing of knowledge. And I don't know, again, for us Europeans here, I don't know how it is in other countries, but I have to say Switzerland, Germany, and all these countries, it always felt like, oh, if I have this knowledge, I'm not gonna share it. It's mine. It's precious. And that's something I learned so different when I was over in North America and Canada and the States, where sharing is just a total normal thing. You totally help each other to level up at the same time and become good, you know? And people are supportive. People are supportive to do stuff and things like that. And as well, yeah, so what Liz is saying, for sure, I constantly have a lot of love-hate relationship. Okay, yeah, totally. That's a thing as well, where you guys support each other. Share cool stuff. Share if you have cool stuff. Because again, for me as a teacher as well, if I see my students outperforming me, that only means I've done my job right. If my students eventually take my job, that means I've done a damn good job to teach my students, right? So, and they did a damn well job to level up their skills and become good and become strong artists. So again, share your knowledge, be a community, encourage each other to do these things. And this stuff here is definitely part of it, right? So we have definitely, by sharing knowledge, by sharing your workflows, this helps somebody else, right? Somebody else who wants to learn this as well and wants to create it. And at the end, again, you all know 3D it can be semi-easy to learn, but everything else you wanna get out, or if you want to create something, it needs time. So it's not everybody's thing. So you don't need to be worried that somebody else is taking your knowledge now and becomes the next godfather in CG, right? And if so, well done, put the time in and well deserved. But this is just to get back to this. This is really nicely done here, even with this gray shaded render as well, and then broken down, and then until we see this gameplay here and this playthrough as well. I'm not gonna dive into this. This seemed to be a little bit a different project when I played it. I don't know, KERRI, if that's the case, but it felt a little bit like different than what you were showing up here. So yeah, I'll just wait for your comment here. And you share. Hey, KERRI, that was an amazing point. And that's another part by teaching is so great. If you learn to teach, if you share, you deepen the knowledge right away, immediately. And that's a really cool part. Oh, your environment is at the end of the game. Okay, cool. I see. Yeah, nice. So if we go through here, so it's probably back here. Because I went like halfway. Oh, yeah. Cool. Nice. Yeah, super cool. I love that you guys already have it in like a gameplay, and everything is coming together, which is amazing. So, KERRI, do you have any questions at that point as well? Or wait, is different style together 8? Do you have any questions just before I move over to Cameron in that case? Feel free to just drop them here. Especially for the blog we're going to write. Um, Honestly, I think the breakdown is pretty good because what do you want to show, right? At the end, you show your Unreal, unless you have other cool Unreal in-engine stuff where you have sliders to manipulate, where you have certain, I don't know if you use any procedural elements in it where you can use some sliders and stuff changes, then I would definitely showcase that. But I think from a complexity, again, guys, think of it, it shouldn't be too long as well. So ideally, it always depends on how recruiters work. Ideally, you have, if you send this out to apply for jobs, you send it as an email with a little teaser, 3, 4 cameras going through the environment. Hey, this is my reel. Here is more information, and you send the ArtStation link, right? Because as an artist team, that's definitely the material to talk about. So interviews in production work usually the way you give them a teaser. The recruiter's like, oh, this is a strong student. Let's talk. Sends to the art team or the artist team. The artist team looks at it, looks at the ArtStation post, and this gives you a ton of material to talk about as well in the interview. So my interviews at the beginning is specifically, they were always about like, wow, cool, how did you do this? Then what were the challenges for your trim sheets, as example? You know, what were the challenges by creating those? How did you create it, your materials and how maps and whatsoever, right? So that gives you all this stuff in here, gives you plenty of talking material for an interview as well. So it's always a fun part to have, but I wouldn't go more than that, to be honest, because again, think of it the way these people have limited time. Recruiters specifically see a lot of applications coming in, so they need to be able to get the essence fairly quick. That's all. They need to be able to spot the most important stuff fairly quick, and that's it. They're good to go and move forward, next application, right? So for us, it's important to get the most important stuff out with not too much, but not too less information as well. So in your case, I would say this is totally fine and shows plenty of things. And especially because in your reel, you have the benefit of showing as well some of the foliage stuff here as well. So you have a little bit variety to showcase, right? Which can be helpful as well. We talk about variety as well in a second or later, anyways. Okay, let me see. Did I have any questions here? So, cool. All right, Carrie, all good? Nice, awesome. Okay, great. So let's move over to Cameron. Cameron, this piece, when I opened it, I was like, is this a photo? Am I looking at a photo here? And then I saw the wife was like, all right, all right. No, I knew it wasn't a photo just because it's an art station, of course. But so I love these type of presentations. And the cool thing as well, and Cameron, I think you actually have this knife, I'm guessing. So you took reference photos and just did a really accurate representation of it. Just waiting for your answer. Yeah, exactly. So this, guys, is a beautiful example of what reference can do for you. And the one thing I've always battling with sometimes my students is the importance of reference. It's like, okay, and that's why I have a strict rule with my students saying, if you show me something in 3D, I always want to see a reference side by side, always. Otherwise, I won't review it. And the reference part is so important because only that allows us then to spot eventually. I don't know if you guys see it, right? But I think you see it here as well. The fingerprints, right? We have these tiny little dust speckles on it. This little bit wear and tear here in the blade itself. We have a little bit of blade injury here in the metal. At least it looks like here. It doesn't look like so much in here, but here it looks like a little bit like that. So for me, the only thing I wouldn't recognize this if I wouldn't know it's 3D, is the only thing I feel is a little bit a sharp edge here. But again, maybe it is that sharp and then we're totally fine. That's the only thing I was thinking, like, I need to point something out on this asset which doesn't look like, which potentially could stick out to me. And another thing I found as well, just when we talk about being extremely what are you saying? Picky about it is that I unfortunately I can't zoom in here because there is a little bit more striation in your blade, especially up here. There, it feels like there was a little bit more striation. I'm not sure if that was introduced to actually cutting stuff or things like that, and I wasn't able to spot this in your actual blade itself. But stuff like this, guys, beautiful presentation, very appealing to look at, and this is perfect for portfolios. And believe me, guys, like if you show like an example, you can have a big scene with a ton of stuff in, but everything looks absolutely mediocre, and you have a scene like this with one asset, and you showcase this. This can be the thing which gets you a job. So keep in mind, quality over quantity is the most important part. And Cameron did an excellent job here in really observing this asset and nailing it in 3D. Honestly, like every other note I'm gonna pull out of my fingers here is what can I say? A little side story to notes and what people point out, right? So Digital Main, I worked with a supervisor. He got so sick of people always pointing out the flaws on the 3D heads we created that he eventually took a photo of somebody's head, a photo, and showed it. Say, look, this is our new 3D head we created. People were pointing out stuff they thought were wrong. So you can see how as soon as we know something is 3D, we sometimes have a tendency to pick on it and to point it out and to dive into it and be like, oh, I have to see it's 3D, but we are at the level where we can't really see it anymore. So this is really nicely presented. Cameron, the only thing I think which would be cool as well for this is, could be cool, not sure how much it pops though. If I would use it for a demo reel, I would definitely create maybe another asset like that as well, which has a little bit more material, variable materials. So right now we have pretty much a similar type of plastic and a similar type of metal, right? With the blade and the back of the blade, the screws are black. So materials have a certain similarity towards it. But if you show, and I saw your beautiful, what's that, a lighter here, or like almost like a soldering iron blowtorch. Yes, thank you. And this here exactly, and you had even an animation here in the blowtorch as well. And I think these type of products, and I'm gonna show you guys an example on something I did just a couple weeks ago as well with a prop. But this type of stuff, guys, is gold worth. Look at how an animation can change the reflections, right? So you have now traveling reflections, you have stuff happening. So a potential recruiter can immediately see, oh wow, okay, this is really strong, the way it's been textured, and can see how the texture changes based on the camera angle which changes, right? And that's definitely something I would always encourage, specifically if you did this in Arnold, so this takes a little longer to render. Oh no, potentially in Marmoset, what did you use? Marmoset for baking, Arnold for rendering? Arnold for, yeah, okay, nice, cool. What sort of asset? Good question. So let me think, what could be a good asset with variety? I probably would work with something which has maybe a little bit glass in it and a little bit plastic on it, something like that. The other day I saw a really cool one. Let me just pop this up here on ArtStation real quick. ArtStation. Let's go into my collections here. And I have... where was that? I think in here. Yeah, so stuff like this, right? Where we have a nice variety of some rubber-like materials, metals, painted metal, and things like that. And I think especially here, look at how cool this looks like, right? The dirty rubber and gum. And then with a little bit of animation on it, we can see as well how the whole reflections work and the roughness maps kick in and things like that, right? So again, and this, guys, it can't be simple. It doesn't need to be complex. And this is a simple, more the simple side asset, but beautifully presented with beautiful texture details. And that's how I would design your portfolios in general, right? So if you say you want to become a modeler, then maybe choose a little bit more a complex asset to build. If you want to focus more on really material creation assets, then maybe take something more simple, but nail the textures. And that's exactly what Cameron did here. Those textures, in my opinion, are absolutely nailed down. This is beautiful to look at, right? And here as well, Cameron, I think that doesn't need more content because you show the most important stuff. I mean, you could show a map breakdown, that's all. Maybe your baked maps and some things like that. That's probably something I would drop in here as well. But we can clearly see how low res this mesh is and how well the bake worked by all these details and the beveled edges and how this all reads, right? So, okay, let me see here. What sort of Arnold, the other store in this marmoset, they have some of the feedback I've received has been I need to do larger asset and environments and move away from. So do you think just text generation asset would be? Cameron, I know. Honestly, when I was back at school, I just wanted to focus on the character and props, and I got told, oh, you have to do an environment, you have to do all this and this and this and this. Honestly, listen to what you want to do. If you want to do deep props and assets and things like that, build props, assets, and things like that, but build them the quality level you have it here. That's it. And because, again, if you don't want to become an environment artist at the long run, why should you build an environment, right? If you want to become a weapon artist, then focus on building weapons, then build a complex weapon, right? But for me, it's always the most important part is to look at the industry you want to work at, the company you want to work at, and ideally what asset you want to build. So what is your favorite asset? What do you want to create, right? And based on what you want to create, you can then make a choice on what's next. But in my opinion, so Cameron, were you passionate about this project? Just as a yes/no question, I'm curious. Exactly. So the passion is clearly visible in how you enjoyed presenting this asset in Marmoset here, in putting it all together. And that's, guys, what we want to see. I want to see a passionate project. I want to see somebody who was fire for their project, right? So don't waste your time with stuff you don't want to do, because you eventually run out of passion and joy and you're not enjoying it anymore. So I think the most important part is like, and I like that to do this in the mornings. Sometimes get up in the mornings and think about what you're most passionate about, because the mornings my functional brain isn't working that well quite yet. So I'm like, okay, and I keep going more towards my heart decisions or gut decisions. And those gut decisions are usually the right ones. My mind is then usually fighting them off with some strange justification why I shouldn't do it, right? So, yeah, but thanks. I basically will get me a job quickest at this stage. Plenty of job, because plenty of thanks. But I mean, yeah. So again, then look at the studio, look what you want to do, and just keep doing it. And Cameron, I can only say this as well. Sorry, my cat is just here now. Okay, he's leaving. So give it time. Keep creating projects. I had just the other day one of my mentor students who was insanely strong in the mentorship. Yes, Amelie, Kitty, and he always distracts me hard, so it's hard to focus then. But so basically, my student, we had finished the mentorship roughly a year ago. Now he landed a job. He's in Portugal. He landed a job in Canada, remote, and now as it looks like, he's going over to Canada because they want him there. So you can see how, but the thing he did, he kept working. He kept doing personal work. So in that case, Cameron, feel free to just pick something else and start working on it, keep working on it. And honestly, happy to kind of take a look at it as well. You could just kind of send me a DM here on Discord as well if you want to have a quick input on if this is a cool asset to build next, and then just go with it. But I would definitely, of course, if you apply with this prop for an environment role, that won't land you the role, right? If you apply with this prop for a character role, that won't work as well. So just keep these things in mind. It has to cater to the role you're applying for. And the reason why a lot of schools push more for like a generalistic way of like, hey, create an environment, create a character, create all this stuff, is because it diversifies you a little bit better. But I'm always in the mindset like, why should you diversify if you know exactly what you want to do? Then do that you want to do, but do it really well and focus on that, right? And I think a little bit diversity in your asset, or maybe a little bit of more complex object if you want to go for a modeling position and things like that, that will get the job done. But again, sometimes these things just take time until the right door, the right slot opens up and so on. Okay? Awesome. Hope this helps. Any more questions, Cameron? Awesome. Perfect. All right. Let's move over to Amelie here. Let's go to the top. I've been at the bottom here of this post. What's going on? Nice. You had Colleen. Emily is actually a think tank a graduate as well. So amazing to see your work here, Emily. I've seen on the last state I had was this piece here I've seen floating around from you, which is already really beautiful as well. Nice job on these hair cards and everything. So that looks pretty cool. And on the textures, looking awesome. And here as well, right, guys, this can show really nicely how, and this was Emily's intermediate project in the think tank program, how this can already work as a portfolio piece, right? At least to showcase skin and the ability to present skin properly. And so this is really, and we don't need more. We have a nice close up here on the eye. We can see the skin details. We can see the roughness maps. We can see the groom. We get the short haircut stuff here and so on. So, and this is great for presentation on like, oh yeah, it looks like definitely Emily can texture a face, a human face, and it looks realistic. So this is already an option to again showcase your work. And then let's take a look here at Amelie's final now, which is this one here. So again, really strong presentation. So if we start at the presentation part first, we have a nice eye-catching close-up or semi-close-up of the upper body. Then we go into a full body, and then we have something which ArtStation doesn't want to show because apparently it has maintenance now. let me just update this. We'll see. Maybe it works now. Okay, there we go. So the turntable works. And I love, for turntables, it's always nice to have, again, either a little bit of ground on it, like a little bit rocks. We have a little bit particles around. And again, guys, look at how nice we can see the specula or the light roll off all these pieces in the assets, right? So we see the specularity of the gemstone here, of the metals, of the leather pouches and all that kind of stuff. And that's definitely something which is important to see. If we keep going down, more like a close-up on the face. This here is a little bit of repetition of what you already have up here. So this could be something I potentially would remove. I mean, let's see, did I miss something? Because again, I like how we see a little bit more of the stone though, or at least a little, yeah, no, we have more to see. So I kind of like this because we see, this could be a good opening shot as well because we see the pouches and all that stuff, which adds always to the interest of your character. And here a little bit of black and white version, which I think is artistically cool. Just to see kind of the contrast value inside of your character and detail shots. So these are really important areas to showcase, right? Because a lot of work went into those boot, a lot of work went into those pouches and stuff I've always been looking for is color breakup in elements. And we can see this really nicely here. We see color breakup in the leather. All this kind of stuff is nicely popping through. Here in the leather, we have a different type of leather as it looks like here, a more well-maintained. And it kind of makes sense to a degree as well, but it's potentially a little bit more protected here than these guys here. They're more exposed towards the outside. I like as well that we see some sort of breakup here in those chainmail links, which is really cool to see. And again, just focusing on the most important areas. A little bit on the back, just to kind of see how the back looks like. And then we have a full character presentation here from all angles in a pose that shows me as well, cool, that character was most likely rigged or something. So you can pose the character. That means for me as a potential employee to be like, okay, Amelie definitely knows how to put a rig in there and presents the character, because sometimes clients want to see the work presented, right? Sometimes clients don't want to see it like that. And then we present it as a studio to showcase it nicer to the client. So that's definitely a nice way to showcase. We have a map breakdown. I personally always love the gray shaded versions of things, because they, especially in character work, and this brings me, this is all for you sculptors and character people. If you can sculpt the way that your gray shaded work already looks like the material you're planning to do in, that can help you a lot. It's always beautiful to be able to sculpt the way the material so people can recognize, oh, this is clearly leather, oh, this is clearly a type of fabric, oh, this is clearly metal, and so on. So sculpting the material before it has actually material on. Yep, here, whole body breakdown. This here, beautiful as well, showcasing the hair card grooms, or the hair cards in general. And this is a really nice way to showcase by just graying out the head, because it lets us focus purely on the groom. We don't get distracted by anything. That's always nice for the groom. And then here, a little bit of detail pass on the face, which is awesome as well. And and we can see it here, right? The metal and all these areas, we can read the material already just looking at it. And UVs as well. So I think this doesn't need more. The only thing you could add, of course, is as well. So guys, in general, I would, I'm coming to a couple more details, Amelie, here in a second. But in general, I would always recommend to create, you can create a tiny little reel as a starter, basically. And I'm just giving you an example. It's an old example, but I think it's still one of my most favorite real examples in ways of simplicity. So I'm just stopping the share here real quick and reshare just a sec. I gotta open the reel first though, just a sec here. Where is it? Too many windows. Okay, let's reshare. Here we go. All right, so I think you guys, yeah, there we go. And now I'm just gonna open this example here. So this is a Nathan Drake Uncharted 4, but watch this reel. It's a Naughty Dog presentation, so a very simple and slow camera showing the whole body. The light is very simple. We could debate about having a little bit more, but it works with the mood of the game. Here, the ground, because the ground itself is a showcase piece, right, with the splash and a couple leaves and wood, could be an inspiration for you guys as well if you do actually work and have a character in pose to make things more interesting. Have a little bit of a environment diorama piece underneath, which pops as well. Then we have here basically the pouch and the holster showcase. So it's still, the camera's only on important areas: hands, arm, gun, watch, face, and we always have a slight little spin in it. So that means we can see how the maps roll, how the maps behave, and a last camera zooming out with a tiny little bit of key light, and that's it. Super simple, but still one of my favorite presentations on a character. Of course, you do not have to do it exactly that way. That's not what this is about, but it's about keeping things simple, and stay away, guys, from cameras. They do this. Like one camera path going all over the place, zooming in, out. Think about real cameras, how it's been done in movies, how it's been done in proper presentation of things, how it's been done in advertisings, where you have usually one camera slowly presenting the product, slowly present your asset. And just another example on that, this is oh no, wait, okay, I gotta open here, I have it here posted. So this piece here, I did the exact same thing for a piece on Insta, right? Where I basically took my latest project and did just some very slow digestible camera pans over these objects. So you can see the highlights rolling here, right? You can see the reflection changing in these areas. So it's a nice way to showcase. And then if you work with a little bit of depth of field, it's a nice way to actually showcase certain of your props and the way they've been textured and detailed and so on. This wasn't even supposed to become a portfolio piece, but I kept doing stuff or presentations or things I needed for my students in class. So I ended up putting it all together eventually and just rendered this piece out. But again, you can see how these cameras add much more life to something, right? So use this as a chance and play with it. Play artistically then with your presentation. Have fun developing those cameras and work with them. So Amelie, when it comes to a couple just general things, I had a couple notes here as well. I just wanted to point out where I think they're just important to be aware of. And I know you potentially had that in your reference already, but sometimes, and it's funnily, and Sriram in here will think that's exactly the same notes I had because he had exactly the same type of armor or piece like that. Let me see, it was okay. Yeah. So is sometimes in 3D we have to be careful about the intensity of bumps and scratches and things like that. So as example, when I look at the intensity on these armor pieces here, it reminds me more like I'm looking more for like something tiny little bit more polished, little less sculpted in or displaced or sculpted in depth, more like surface roughness breakups and color, but you have beautiful color changes in here, so that looks amazing. It's really just the only thing I would tone down is the intensity of certain of the base scratches, unless of course your reference is exactly like that. But I wasn't still, the material reminds me more at the moment, it's more like a heavy steel, like a heavy casted steel, right? So that's just something in general I would point out. If you guys do armor pieces, that you focus a little bit more on more the break up in the roughness, and less hammering it too deep in, because totally legit, this could be an armor piece, but again, I would say based on her clothing and based on what she's wearing, this type of armor was probably a little bit more heavy-handed blacksmithed because we can almost see the hammer indents and like the hammerage on it. And it gives me just the feel that this must be really, really heavy. That's it. So we read weight of material as well through the way it's been textured and it looks like. Another thing I saw as well is the blade right now here. This blade looks to me more like it's oxidized and rusty. So this is something I would as well, I mean, of course, if this hasn't been used for a while, then absolutely. But I would have expected more something like this. Polished, sharpened blade. If you could have left it totally little bit more oxidized and like that here, but I would expect a little bit more polished, because you would think that if she's going to war, if she's fighting or whatsoever, that this blade gets sharpened pretty frequently, right? So that this would show bare metal and the lines of the metal as well, and things like that, right? So but that's pretty much it, to be honest. I think in general I probably would tone down a tiny little bit the red tones, but otherwise beautiful piece, beautiful presented, nicely polished. Love how the leather reads, how the roughness maps read, all this kind of stuff. And yeah, congrats to all of you basically on the creating so strong work already so early on. It's amazing to see. Amelie, do you have any questions regarding this so far? Just seeing some people. Okay, thank you. So with these focus and improve questions, so this is the only things I would probably test out. But my question would be, are you tired of the project? Are you still eager to keep working on it? Because that is for me usually the driver on what comes next. Because if you're tired of it, I would take all the knowledge you have and of everything you've learned and package it into a nice, fresh new project. Because think of what you want to study, what you want to look at, and based on that, you basically pick a new project and work on that new project. And because sometimes we have to give it a certain amount of time, but the thing is with natural with human attendance spans is that we have usually 2 months where we think something new shiny is cool, and then we drop it because we're bored. So think of it this way, and I see this every year in the gym. It happens every year again. I'm working out every day usually since 12 years, or 14 years now. I don't know, something like that. Um, and the one consistent thing is you have people joining the gym in January and they drop out usually in March. Just because the beach body can't be done like this. You don't lose the extra 300 pounds like this. It's nothing like this, right? So we need to be able to grind sometimes. And all of you doing these projects know what it means to grind, because eventually you lose your fascination for the project to a certain degree, and then it becomes grind, but you still gotta stick through it. So let's see what Amelie says here. I'd actually like to do something new. Exactly. If this is for the job, we could improve it. So, I mean, it depends. I mean, I would probably improve these tiny little things I just mentioned because they shouldn't take you too long. But on the other hand, this is a strong piece, you know? Me as an employer, I would, if I look at this, I'm like, yeah, Amelie totally knows what she's doing. And this kind of stuff here wouldn't be the break point for me at all, right? I see a nice sculpt, I see a great groom, I see a good presentation, I see great textures. So that's not a break point for me, absolutely not, right? And that's why if I would probably start with a new project, keep using this to apply for jobs, and that's pretty much it. And yeah, add the reel. That could be cool to send out, of course. Cool. All right. So, guys, let me just go through a couple portfolio tips here. I hope this kind of wraps it all up, and you're happy with this type of review. Again, otherwise, just ask. But I want to go here through again. I wrote a couple things down we already discussed, though. Quality over quantity is clear. Your strongest piece should always be the first in a demo reel. If you have a clear quality difference, take the old one out. Rather leave one piece in your reel than have three pieces and two of them are absolutely mediocre and one is great. It doesn't matter. Your strongest piece defines where you're at. You do not need to show, oh God, like if every employee wants to see me having done 20 characters. Just not gonna happen. So don't worry about that. Keep it short and interesting. We talked about that briefly as well. Don't take too much time. That was the example I just shared with you in the reel as well. Then avoid showing the same areas in the cameras. We discussed that already. And good cameras goes hand in hand. So make nice, clean movements that these cameras have time, that the viewer has time to actually look at your stuff. Then focus on the most important areas. That was covered as well in the Uncharted reel example. Then create a title and credit slate for your reels that can help you in a way of, if you're a recruiter, sometimes these reels land at recruiters' desks without you sending it to them. If that happens, you want to have at the end of it your name and your email address and things like that in it so that person can reach you without first, oh, that reel is amazing, but I don't have a name in it. What I'm going to do. So put a nice title slate, title play thingy at the beginning where you say like warrior lady, and then at the end you put a nice slate with your name, what job you're, a 3D character artist, a LinkedIn title maybe, if you have LinkedIn, talking about LinkedIn in a second, and and basically, sorry guys, the talking lets me lose my voice soon, and basically just these informations that people know how to reach you. Cool. So then we come to the most important aspects to be hired. There's a couple things you can up your game when it comes around that. So first of all, personality. I hire people. Let's say I get two portfolios. I get a portfolio with outstanding, crazy work, and one which is really good but not as good as the other one. The personality of the person with the good work is amazing, and the personality of the outstanding work is absolutely ego driven. I'm the best. I I'm the best. Guess who we gonna hire? Not the ego driven person for sure, because ego in a team is can destroy teams, can make other artists leave, is highly toxic, and is just not good to deal with. So, and I have it went even that far. We had from other companies across the world, people applying at studios I was working for. People in my studio know people in those other studios. Had a quick chat about like, or did still know those people from working there as well. No hire. If the personality doesn't match, no hire. Because again, a team is usually has to be a well functioning, dynamic, um, yeah, team which kind of gets stuff done together, right? And if you have somebody in your team who can't take criticism, who is like, if I'm the lead artist, I need my team members to be able to act up on me. Oh, my cat is just going crazy. On my leg is the scratch tree now. Okay. So, but that's and that's like a no-go, right? So I need to have people they can listen to feedback, they can take criticism and translate it into action. And if you have people with high egos and they think they're the best, they can't take criticism. So that means you have somebody in your team who doesn't do what you need them to do. And sometimes it doesn't matter what we artists think. Sometimes the most important part is what does the supervisor think. It doesn't matter if it makes sense or not. It's just what the supervisor thinks and wants. And you either do it or you're not doing it, but then you maybe it's your last game contract you're working on for that company. Who knows, right? So personality, really important part. LinkedIn profile. For those of you who don't have LinkedIn profiles, create LinkedIn profiles and start connecting recruiters. Connect all recruiters and type in your favorite game company or film company and recruiter. Connect, connect, connect. Those recruiters are thankful if you connect them because as bigger their network, as less work they have to do to send out information onto different streams, as more people it reaches, as better the chances for them to find a candidate for the job. Social media, always a good thing too. Build up your Insta presences. I was in the lazy position of not needing it to do for the last 10 years because I was pretty much just my jobs were word by mouth basically. You know somebody in the other company, plop, you're there. And that's again the community building. You guys already start here through 80 level, through other discords, through other channels. Build community, give feedback to each other, help each other out because you will remember your names down the road. You will eventually be like, oh yeah, oh no, I worked with Amelie. She's great. I know her through the Discord. Let's get her for an interview. So many jobs go inside the company just because the company's always asking teams, hey, do you guys know somebody for this position? And then it goes, right? So take this as a chance, the connection part, right? Then being able to negotiate, that comes a little later. Excuse me, guys. That comes a little later. As soon as you have your second job and things like that, know your worth. Talk to your, probably, I don't know if I should say this or not, but I'm always advocating that you sometimes talk to each other as well. If you're in the same position that you know a little bit what salaries are being paid and things like that. Companies wouldn't like me to say that, I guess, because then they potentially have to pay fair salaries to everybody and can't keep dumping someone. But I think it's an important part because your work should be paid worth what you're doing, and that's pretty much it, guys, so far. So I hope this kind of wraps everything up in the thought of portfolios and applying for jobs. Feel free to drop me questions if you want to right now. I definitely have 5 more minutes here to answer a couple questions if you want to. And yeah, I hope this was a helpful session. Feel free to connect me on Insta or on here through Discord if you want to. Discord is usually a little tougher. Insta is a little bit faster because Discord is mostly used for me and my students, but happy to kind of see as well if you text me here. And yeah. So, okay, do you think more junior artists will get hired too? Good question. As we all know, the world is in a weird state with whatever is going on right now. Um, the I again think of it this way: the entertainment industry won't disappear, or it will stay and grow over time. The anticipated numbers for games and film to grow is quite high until 2030. We coming still, we bleeding out of this COVID drop we had, where every company just needed to make their investors happy and just laid off people before they need to hire them back on because they can't produce, of course, if they're low staffed. So all this kind of stuff, I hope is going to change soon, and it's kind of ramping up the industries again a little more. I'm still surprised, like it feels still like everybody around me is at least is working and is employed and has plenty of work and has too much work. So definitely stuff is happening. Um, the only thing I can say so far is just please keep grading up your skills. Work on stuff, enjoy the process, work on your personal projects, become better, share it, and enjoy the process. Because again, like my student a year ago, a year later, he got a job. You know, sometimes you have to give it time. And one thing I've seen consistently is with the really, really strong students that almost all of them so far have gotten jobs. Not always right after school, but sometimes a little later, and so on. Okay? All right, so what do we have? Cameroon, but different. Awesome. Yeah, of course, Cameroon. Happy to help. Of course, Liz. So what else do we have? Advice for students, character concept. Yes, concept artists. I mean, concept art is a niche because it's definitely not every company has 20 concept artists, while you have maybe 20 character modelers. But to keep exploring your skills in concept art, it's the same thing. Keep going. Create cool concepts. Try to create nice, appealing work. And just create 3D versions of that concept. A lot of concept artists these days use ZBrush. They use Fusion 360. They use multiple tools to... They don't focus on the technical aspect of things. They just use them to create CG assets, and then they use whatever topology is needed. Who cares? It's more about the presentation and making things appealing. But it's the same with concept art, right? Like, because maybe your style is very unique. And if that unique style gets picked up through ArtStation or through your Insta eventually, that means somebody's gonna hire you, right? But that's always like concept art, I think, is definitely a little bit more challenging to land a job just because of the nicheness of the job. But again, I'm a strong believer in follow your passion, work on it, level up your skills, be in the concept community around, and just get your work out there. That's the most important part. Yes, of course, you guys can totally connect me on Discord and LinkedIn. Absolutely. Yep, I think that's a great opportunity 80 level offers you guys here, right? Of using these platforms, because even myself, I'm going to 80 level website as well here and there, check out the entries, check out the tutorials and stuff like that, because I strongly believe no matter where you are in your career, you got to keep learning. You got to watch tutorials, you got to read articles, you got to study things and get better, because every day I learn something new just because I do so, right? And sometimes even my students, I ask my students, well, like if you know something better or different than share it in class, because I don't know everything. Who am I to say I know everything, right? And especially in 3D where there's so much to learn. So great to use these channels. Great to have a platform like 80 level here for you guys to have this kind of stuff going on. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it then in this case. All right, guys. It was lovely having you all here. Thanks for joining. And keep up the great work. That's all I can say. And it was really, really nice to review your portfolios here. It was a joy for me as well. And just keep going with that passion. And it will pay off over time. That's for sure.